Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
With candidates from 37 to 77, does age matter in 2020? Well, we're going to talk about that. It's our first foray into 2020 election politics, but we're not going to be trying to break down each candidate or anything like that yet. There's just so many.
Thank goodness.
But
too early.
In addition to looking at does age matter in 2020, we're going to tie that into another article in the New York Times from this Sunday that caught my attention. It's entitled An Odd Massachusetts Election and the Brexit Chaos. So what does a mayoral election in a town only a little larger than Urbana, a town with 12,000 people, or 13,000 people, what does that have anything to do with Brexit? Well, you're going to find out. But before we get too far into it, it's important that we decide why people care about this. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is, hopefully for any presidential election, you're at least tuned in and thinking about who do you want to represent the country. So hopefully all United States citizens care from that standpoint. And if you're an international listener out there, I think you'd care because, usually what we do, for better or worse, has an impact on a lot of the rest of the world. So, and our president absolutely at least has an impact from a societal standpoint on the rest of the world. So there's a lot of different ways you could care, but I think those are just a few of them. And of course, we can't begin this critical conversation without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Well, and it's nice too that you have a plethora of candidates with a wide age range where this can even be a question, I think, which is one reason to be interested as well, is that we're looking at somebody, at least name recognition as young as 46 and as old as 78.
Right.
To be president. And we're not even touching on the gender or the race factors or anything else, which are also widely covered by people who have announced or for the Republicans could announce, to take on President Trump, which I think is the most interesting thing, which isn't really what we're talking about much today, but I think that's the most interesting thing. Will a Republican challenge the sitting president? I think that's a very interesting story,
right,
to take place. But, obviously when age can take precedent over gender and race in today's world, I think that's a very interesting story.
So, one of the things that we're going to look at here is to what extent will age matter? And the article asks, does age matter to Democrats? I think we're going to expand the question a little bit and say, what would it take to beat Trump from a Republican and from a Democrat standpoint? That's a question I'm sure we'll be answering over the next year or more. But at the same time, we're looking at age today. Is age something that will play an important component? Diane Martinez, 70, looked at Beto O'Rourke, 46, and made her choice. It was time for Generation X to fix this country. Doesn't he remind you of Kennedy? Miss Martinez said, as Mr. O'Rourke offered firm handshakes and music recommendations to a coffeehouse crowd. Quote, he's young. That's what it's going to take to try and beat Trump. End quote. I'm looking for someone to be as progressive as Bernie, Mr. Cruz said, tugging on a red, hot Chili Peppers shirt. Actually, she amended, perhaps just Bernie himself. There's a lot of disagreement in the Democratic Party at the moment, which they're
going to screw it up. You heard it here first, folks.
If they don't get it figured out,
see, my glass is half empty right now. It's not half full.
Yeah,
I'm looking at my water here. I think that's the bigger issue than age within the Democratic Party. Nobody knows just how progressive to be to beat Trump. And yours truly thinks that the Democrats need to stay middle of the road to guarantee beating Trump. I mean, I may be wrong as somebody very progressive or who leans a little more left of center than I think is necessary might still beat Trump. But I think if the Democrats can run somebody who's left of center but very close to center, then defeating Trump's a no-brainer. But that's not necessarily today's show. I don't think the age matters though in that. And so to keep within the topic, I'm not sure the age of the Democrat matters. I think it's very important for the Democrats to pick someone who is middle. And if they have to go a little left, then they need to stay as close to center as possible if your true goal is to defeat Trump. Or what I'm holding out for, a Republican candidate that's not Trump. Because I still think that's an option. But sorry, I don't want to sidetrack our show.
What came to mind while you were talking is, I don't know if it has to be, if it is a moderate candidate, okay, let's just say that it is for a moment, a moderate Democrat. The big question to me, again, probably is not, I mean, how old they are may have an impact, and we'll talk more about that. But to me, as it is the left of the left going to come vote, because I don't see them, you know, if they make the mistake of a Bernie Sanders like nominee, I think they've lost, because there's just too many people who won't vote. Okay. It's not that more people will vote for Trump or more people will want Trump. It's that many Americans will not feel like they want to vote for either of those candidates for very different reasons, I'd imagine, obviously, both from a policy, from a personal standpoint, whatever. They're very different individuals. Their race and gender may be the only things that they have in common. So I don't know. To me, that's the big question, because I think that's part of what hurt in 2016, the Democrats. I mean, yes, they got more in the popular vote, but some of the states they lost had to do with poor turnout amongst Democrats. So
I agree. No, I totally agree.
Do you get the people who are coming back and voting for Bernie again, who are going to vote for some of these outside, you know, even further left than Bernie candidates? Are those individuals going to come back and vote again for whoever the Democratic nominee is? I don't know. And I think the question is null and void if...
I can only speak for myself. I think that President Trump is so bad that I would vote for somebody left for a Bernie. I mean, I would vote for that over Trump, but that would not be my first choice, because I could not go to the polls and spend another 4 years with President Trump.
Right.
I just can't do that. I don't care, honestly, how far left it went would be better than Trump. But I agree with you that there are a lot of centrist and moderates, independents, you know, or Democrats and Republicans that are in the center part of the political spectrum who would not go vote. I think you're right with your analogy, but total transparency, I would vote left rather than take a chance of Donald Trump being reelected, which is why it would be interesting if somebody like a Nikki Haley or someone received the Republican nomination, and then you got a left-wing Democrat as the Democratic nominee. Now would I vote Republican?
Yeah.
If you got me a more centrist Republican.
Maybe.
You know, and I
so there's that possibility too.
Well, see, that's why it intrigues me. Will somebody take on a sitting Republican who's not really Republican, Donald Trump, in the nomination process? And how strong would the RNC be to support someone who wasn't Donald Trump?
Mm-hmm. I don't know, because we talked about that in 2016, though,
or
right?
Bob Corker.
Trying to take a route. I know it's different because they didn't have, I mean, at that time, right, they had no incumbent.
Who's the former Arizona Senator? Jeff, starts with an F.
Well, we have the list.
Yeah, but he's not listed.
He's not
they
under
listed
the
Bob
potentials
Corker.
either?
I didn't think so. Well, I'm drawing a blank here. Jeff, it starts with an F. I want to say Fryer, and it's not Fryer.
Let's see, Joe, Jerry, Jason, John.
He's a senator from Arizona that was afraid he was going to be trumped in the primaries, and so he didn't run for re-election.
Senator from Arizona? Is he currently the senator?
No, former senator of Arizona. Everybody's like, really? You guys do a show and you don't even know these guys? How quickly we forget.
Do any of you know? If you do, right now, you're going to take to social media.
He played a role in
Jeff Flake.
Yes, thank you. I knew it started. See, I got it with the F.
Took a second, but
Jeff Flake or Bob Corker, would have my vote in a heartbeat, like a John McCain versus a left-wing Democrat.
Right.
I would vote Republican over that. But if you give me a left-wing Democrat and Donald Trump, I as much as I don't want to go that far left,
right,
I'd rather
you take it over the alternative.
Well, because they won't get to go as far left as they want to go, and I'd rather see somebody start to pull the country back
to center
from the direction that Trump has taken. Yeah.
Well, because when you go, sometimes, right, if you have another extreme candidate, it starts to balance out. Now, maybe near the end of their presidency, you get into going too far that way. But at least at the beginning, that's part of what makes particularly our elections, where we're one of those rare countries that only has two major parties, where we don't have candidates from other parties that usually stand a chance. A lot of other democracies around the world, or, democracy-esque countries, because we've talked about maybe we're not exactly a democracy kind of thing. But my point is, other countries like us, a lot of them have several parties that are usually in contention, realistic contention. And usually for us, that's not the case. So it's always interesting to see how that part of it plays out. Quick history quiz question for y'all, and we'll see if Lance can get it here. Youngest president in U.S. history. And before Lance answers.
Elected or actually president?
Actually served as president.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see if Lance gets it. It would be, I've got a top 10, so we'll see how he does. If you're out there and you're guessing, don't look it up. Don't cheat. At TrueChat.org, Facebook, Twitter, social media. Just let us know. TrueChat.org. Who is it? But before, Lance, we reveal that answer, let's tell people what we're trying to do here today with this conversation.
Oh, man, I got to think and do the mission statement at the same time. Our mission here at TrueChat is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
So do you want me to give you...
no, because I know who it is.
The age.
And I have my argument against you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, if your answer is the wrong one.
Okay.
So I hate to teach you here. Young pup here, okay?
Uh-huh.
What did they call it in Kung Fu? Weed hopper?
Oh, yes. Grasshopper.
Grasshopper.
Yeah.
Grasshopper.
Weed
hopper.
That too, I guess.
Old guy having a brain fart. Weed hopper. It was weed hopper in my mind. Yes, grasshopper, young one.
So if you have any
answer, I know the answer.
Okay. If you have any ethical concerns, though, you know where to find us. ethics@truechat.org. Send an email. ethics@truechat.org. Last chance to submit your answer at TrueChat.org on social media. Okay, Lance.
And if you like us, let your nearest comedy bone know, and
that's right.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
Three shows on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
9, 11, and 1 for the late crowd, where it really opens up. Okay, youngest person ever to serve as president of the United States is one Theodore Roosevelt.
Yes.
He was not elected. He took over when William McKinley was assassinated.
Yes.
He was the sitting vice president.
Uh-huh.
The youngest president ever elected was John F. Kennedy.
Yes. Do you know
there's the when I said
right.
elected or not, okay?
Right.
Because
that's why I said just to ever serve. Right. Yeah, not
and I took care of both answers for all of you out there on Twitter who are now trying to correct us.
Right.
It depends on your rationale, the breadth of your question. Okay.
Because Theodore Roosevelt served until 1909. And but when he was elected the second time, by then he
was older than what Kennedy was.
Right. So Roosevelt, 42, right? So that's the youngest ever. Mm-hmm. And Kennedy, 43. So, they
was the youngest elected.
Neck and neck. Right. Youngest ever elected, 43. Youngest ever served, 42. And who's the third?
Well, I would say President Obama.
That's a good guess. Bill Clinton.
Okay.
46. Obama was 47.
That would have been, did I flip those two? Were they 3 and 4?
Yeah, well, Bill Clinton's tied with
10.
Grant, Ulysses S. Grant.
Really?
For 46.
Grant was that young. That one I didn't realize.
But he also, I mean, him and Roosevelt, it's kind of like, I don't know, how fair is it? I mean, we're counting them, sure, but at the same time, people didn't live as long. Life expectancy wasn't as high. So did 46 seem older then?
I would have said 3 and 4 were Obama, Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
So when you said Clinton, then I thought 4 was Obama.
Clinton, Obama.
But Grant's in there.
Yep.
In between them.
And tied with Obama is Grover Cleveland.
The first time.
Right.
Because he was elected.
The only
person elected twice.
That's right.
To non-consecutive terms.
Yep. Hey, he had no shame.
But
hey, I lost. That doesn't mean I can't run again, right?
Well, and he lost a minority race. He lost a race where the winner, Benjamin Harrison, did not receive a majority of the popular vote.
So, I mean, in fairness.
So when they talked about,
right.
So-and-so not winning the popular vote.
Youngest to ever serve, John F. Kennedy, youngest to ever be elected. Mm-hmm. Or the president who was the youngest ever elected when his first term thing. Anyway. So, Lance, age, how much does it matter? I mean, you can be 35, right? That's
sure.
the deal.
Yeah.
The only qualifications are you got to be born here in the United States, i.e. a natural born citizen,
mm-hmm.
and you got to be 35 years old, and that's it. So if you got those two things, so for all you listeners out there who are 35 or older and are a natural born citizen, congratulations, you're qualified to run for president.
That's right.
Doesn't mean you're qualified to serve because that's up to the people. But you're qualified to run.
That's right.
So I don't know. The youngest that we've got right now is 37. Do you think we can never dip under 40, Lance? Is that reasonable?
I'll never say never.
You comfortable with that?
I'll never say never.
Okay.
I taught for all those years and thought we would see a female president before we would see a minority president. And we actually saw the minority president. So there's how good my prediction levels are. No, I think it's a very likely that we could, especially as we see a younging of America. And we know that one of the least tapped segments of our voting society are young people. So, I don't think as you get older, you necessarily feel like it takes an older person. I think that one's split. There are many people that I talk to that are my friends that say, oh, we can't have anybody that young. But there are almost just as many who say, well, age doesn't matter. If they're the best candidate, they're the best candidate. So I don't think old people are going to tip the scale. The thing for a young president is somebody to motivate the young people, I mean, those under 30, to bother to register and vote. And if you can get somebody to do that, then I think in all likelihood, we could end up with somebody in their 30s. So I think that's where the likelihood comes to me that could take place.
Okay. And remember everybody out there, because Lance just mentioned registering to vote. If you're listening today and you're not registered and you'd like to be, it really is easier than it's ever been before. There's a lot of different places you can go. The one that we're familiar with and work with is vote.org. Vote.org. And actually, I'm excited here, Lance, because not yet, I wish we had it up for this episode, but pretty soon, all the way up until the registration period closes for 2020, we're going to be letting people know on the program that you'll be able to register to vote by going to truechat.org/vote. But in the meantime, vote.org, and they'll be the ones facilitating that, place on our website for you to be able to register. But you can vote and you can register to do it online. It takes 2 minutes or less. So get her done. Super easy, right? Yep. If you're in one of those states where, regardless of what the voting system is, they work with all 50 states. So
it's a good way to get in there.
Yep. You got to get it done. And if you're not sure, you can also find out on vote.org. You go there, you enter your name and address and stuff, and they'll look it up. So, pretty easy.
No excuses.
That's right. And you can request an absentee ballot from them. You can get your, voting location from them. So you can do it all in that one spot, and pretty much nothing takes more than 2 minutes on that site to do. So real easy. Now we're looking at an odd Massachusetts election and the Brexit chaos. So I'm not entirely sure, Lance, how we're going to pronounce this. Mr. Correa is, I think, what we're going to go with. So he's the mayor of a town in Massachusetts called Fall River. And prosecutors are currently accusing him of spending $230,000 of investors' money, which they thought they were investing in a marketing app that allegedly Mr. Correa actually used to buy jewelry, clothes, a Mercedes, and ultimately to win his mayoral campaign. Not sure how he thought he'd get away with that, but
well, he hasn't been convicted yet.
That's right. Maybe
he's been charged.
Doesn't mean he did it.
We still live in a land of innocent
correct.
until proven guilty.
That's correct. So at the moment, he, according to the law, he hasn't done it. So maybe he wasn't thinking he'd get away with it because he never did it in the first place. Anyway, Mr. Correa contested the charges and refused to step down, so some citizens of Fall Rivers got enough signatures to force a recall election, which was held on Tuesday. The recall election was an absolute walloping for the mayor. About 61% voted to remove him from office. Only 4,911 people, or 38%, voted to keep him in office. It was a clear popular mandate. But, Lance, like with all these things, there's a twist. The ballot had 2 questions on it. Number one, the first question was whether to recall Mr. Correa, and another on whom to replace him with. So 5 people ran to fill the mayor's seat, including Mr. Correa himself. Yes, you can do that. Doesn't that seem...
Yep.
Doesn't that seem odd?
No, it made perfect sense. I loved it. I thought it was great.
And then if that wasn't weird enough, right, to see that it's like, well, why are you running? You're getting recalled, dude. You know what I mean? What's the deal here? It might seem like the height of hubris for a mayor under federal indictment to run for re-election, even as he's being recalled. But whether he knew it or not, he was onto something. Mr. Correa received 4,808 votes in the balloting on who should be the next mayor, almost exactly the same number, 4,911, that he had gotten on the recall question. But with the other 4 candidates splitting the rest of the vote, that was enough to put him ahead. Yes, Lance, and yes, listeners, you did hear that right. The same election that removed Mr. Correa by nearly a 2-to-1 ratio also returned him to office. Democracy can be a strange thing.
I love it. That's the way it's supposed to happen. I mean, he had the most name recognition.
That's right. Or whatever. I mean, right. So, those 4,000 some people they thought regardless that he was the right guy.
He shouldn't be recalled, and we want him to be the mayor.
Yep. And nobody else
got 40% or whatever that
many votes.
4,000 is. Since there were so many candidates to split the negative votes, he wins.
Yep.
I love it. That's the way it's supposed to. I love it when a plan comes together.
Oh, so clever on his part, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's not, you hate to say it, but it kind of, I know you're going to talk about it as it parallels Brexit a little bit in England. But to me, I drew the comparison of what I was talking about earlier with our current president. If you don't run somebody, he's going to get his 35 or 38%. And if that's enough for him to win states, to win an electoral college, and you start splitting votes like we did before, or people not voting,
right,
and he wins with his 38% or his 42%, his people are going to vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find the 20%, 30% in the middle. I think it's more like 30, 35% in the middle.
Yeah.
To vote for somebody else.
To sway it.
Right.
Enough to not let him.
And they all have to go with that same person.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if it's a 3-person race, you think it's 2 and a lot of people stay home. I see it as a third party, a 3-person race.
Uh-huh. Well, and that's I think what we talked about for the 2016 election, right, was the idea that, well, I don't like anybody who's running, so I'm not going to vote. Keep in mind that the issue with that is, even if it's true, and it was, I think, for a lot of people in 2016, then you might get stuck with one that you really don't like. And I'm not saying, Hillary, Trump, I'm just saying whichever side you're on, that has to be the driving force, is who do you like the least? Because then it's not so much about voting right for someone you really like as it is about voting against someone that you don't think is a good choice or is the worst choice. So votes are not always to affirm support for someone. They can also be to express discontent with someone as well. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, part of what you saw here in this Fall Rivers vote, right? Is you had 61% of people who were willing to express their discontent, but they couldn't agree on anybody that was better.
Right.
And so, we took you out and then we put you right back in because the 61% of us couldn't all agree on who we thought was a better choice.
Well, they didn't really put them back in, but they win by default,
right?
Because their 39% was enough to win the election.
And that's he had the largest group of people who agreed that he was the best option.
And that's what I can see happening in the 2020 election.
Yes. But now it's different, right, at a presidential level, because if nobody makes our threshold for the Electoral College, then we're going to be throwing it to the House of Representatives with each state getting only one vote.
But Trump could get 40% of the votes in enough states to win the Electoral College.
Right.
And actually end up getting less votes than he did this last time.
Yes. Still possible. I mean, I think I would have to check, but I think the margin for Trump is the most significant difference between popular vote and still winning the Electoral College and president. It doesn't mean it can't be less, because it can, as Lance is saying, but I don't think that's ever happened. I mean, we've had what happened in 2016 happen before on a few occasions where the person who won the popular vote did not become president, but I don't think the margin has ever been as wide in terms of difference in popular vote as it has been in 2016. In fairness, we have more people as well. In other words, that 3 million odd some votes that Hillary got that Trump didn't, I don't think in 2000 it wasn't that wide.
Wish we had our producer here because I'd have him look up the 1912 election. You had Woodrow Wilson running against William Howard Taft, Democrat, versus Taft, the Republican. And then you had Theodore Roosevelt run as the Bull Moose Party. And then you had Eugene Debs run as the Progressive Party. And Wilson won with, I think, 42% of the popular vote. But he won in the Electoral College because you had Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft, the sitting Republican president, both with 28 and 25% or something of the vote. So the Republicans had the majority, but their two candidates split the vote. And then Debs took 6% of the vote as a progressive candidate.
So it was 41.8% of the vote is what Taft got, which was 6.2 million popular vote.
No, you mean Wilson. 1912 election?
Yeah.
Wilson got 42% of the vote, not Taft.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. 41.8% was Wilson. Yep.
And Taft took 20-some.
23.2%. And Debs was 6.
And the Bull Moose Party of Theodore Roosevelt took how much?
27.
Okay.
So 41, 27, and 23, and then 6. Mm-hmm.
So that's what happens when you get extra candidates. So I don't know if my comment for that election was because of what you said about President Trump.
Right.
And then I'm not sure, Bill Clinton in 1992, you had Clinton running against, was that Bob Dole? But then Ross Perot took double digits as a third party candidate.
Right. So Ross Perot got 19.7 million popular vote. George Bush was 39.1. Bill Clinton, 44.9 million.
Million or percent?
Million. Bill Clinton was 44.9 million. George Bush, 39.1. Ross Perot, 19.7 million.
So 39 and 20 is 59.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill Clinton got about 41% of the vote.
Right. So again.
So you have those two elections.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump got what percent of the popular vote? Did he got more than that? So to your comment that margin.
Donald Trump, 62.9 popular vote. Hillary Clinton, 65.8 popular vote. Gary Johnson, 4.4. So
he was in the upper 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had those two elections were both about 42%.
Right.
Bill Clinton's first term.
So yeah, it has been.
And
right.
But,
so no.
but it was major third parties.
Yes.
You had Ross Perot almost at 20% in 1988, and you had the Bull Moose Party of Theodore Roosevelt with 27%.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, the third party candidate, the third place only got 4.4 million votes.
Right.
So wasn't even close
right,
to.
Which was only like 2%
right.
Of the vote.
And Jill Stein got 1.4.
Right.
So, I mean, those two were, way, way down the list.
Right.
So how does this relate to Brexit?
Sorry, just the historian side of me. You made that comment. And I'm like,
the history thing.
I don't think so. Now, there's one more thing, just so people don't comment too much. And I know we got to close up here, but the one thing about the 1912 election was 75% of the popular vote went for a progressive candidate because
yes,
Theodore Roosevelt was progressive, Woodrow Wilson was progressive, and Debs was progressive. So even though there was a minority president and Wilson only got 42% of the vote, 75% of the country wanted somebody who thought like Wilson.
I think.
So anyway, go ahead.
The simple thing with Brexit is, on the one hand, British lawmakers believe that because the 2016 vote, they have a mandate to make Brexit happen no matter what. That's what happened in 2016, as voters said, we want Brexit.
Yep.
But because British voters did not express a clear majority for any specific vision in 2017's general election, British lawmakers cannot form a clear majority for any one plan on how to withdraw from the European Union.
Yep.
Miss May's plan failed by a triple-digit margin when it was put to a vote. A no-deal Brexit favored by hardliners also failed, and there is not a majority for other options either, like a second referendum or simply revoking Brexit. In other words, capturing public sentiment and converting it into government is messy, imperfect, and generally not a science.
We don't know what we know. We don't like this.
Yep.
But we don't know what we want to put in its place.
Exactly. That's the synopsis of the show. So where can you listen, Lance, for new people?
Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and anywhere else fine podcasts are found.
Sounds good to me. And you can engage at TrueChat.org, at TrueChat.org on Facebook, Twitter, and more. So please find us and let us know your thoughts there. For the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And thanks for tuning into the Presidential History Show. I'm Lance Jackson.
We'll talk to you next time. In the meantime, be the change.